Yeah, I'm wearing Jacint's dress. I won this fair and square, and I'm gonna wear this like the pretty princess that I am. As a matter of fact, where's LeBon? Hey, what's good, y'all? Soul here, and welcome back to my story mode. So, as of now, we have completed both the base game as well as the DLC for Pokemon Legends CA. And of course, as per usual, the DLC released to mixed reviews. There's a lot of people out there that enjoy what it brought to the table, liked what it added to the game, and had their time with it. And of course, there are plenty of others who found it grindy, repetitive, tedious, and felt like it added absolutely nothing of substance. And I totally get both sides of this. If you feel like you've gotten your money's worth, then that's great and that's awesome. However, there's a lot of people who rightfully feel like gaming is getting a little too expensive to justify that extra $30 on top of the already heavy expense of the $70 expected for the base game to get the full experience. Don't get me wrong, while I definitely enjoyed my time, it's still an extremely steep price to expect from people. So you could definitely see as to why people would be upset about something like this. If the base game barely met their expectations, then why would the DLC help that much more? But that's precisely what I've been thinking about a little bit here. What were our expectations for Legends ZA? As Pokemon fans, we are in the weirdest position possible where our expectations for every game going forward are so low, it's genuinely abysmal. The reason people are so upset about this generation of Pokemon is because they feel like for the money that we're spending on it, we shouldn't have to go in with such low expectations, expecting the bare minimum to get a little bit better each game. Upon revealing Pokemon Legends ZA, those expectations were definitely tampered with. Albeit, while those expectations were probably still low for most people, they were still pretty reasonable. You already good and well know what's going to happen right now, so why don't you go ahead, get nice and cozy in your chair, grab a nice cold glass of orange juice, and why don't you have a little bit of that Feebas casserole I baked up for you, while we talk about our expectations versus the reality when it comes to Pokemon Legends CA. Also, I say our expectations very loosely. This is just based off of what I was expecting and like a lot of what I've seen shared with other people, but if this doesn't apply to you, this doesn't apply to you. That being said though, let's go ahead and hop right into it. Expectation 1, a mostly in-depth Lumiose that gave us the chance to explore it like never before with some familiar faces to guide us through our journey a little bit. The first thing that people were extremely nervous about when it came to Pokemon Legends ZA was the fact that it took place exclusively in Lumiose City. Given the fact that pretty much no other Pokemon game has had that sort of limitation before, honestly, that's a pretty valid concern. In our first ever Pokemon Legends game, we were exploring the possibility of using zones as a mechanic. We were going to completely different environments, each with their own unique vibe and cast of Pokemon to catch and battle. All the while, we were utilizing Jubilife Town as our base of operations, our hub. It was a very effective system, one that we figured would be a shoo-in for future Legends titles if we got any more. On top of that, we are returning to Lumiose City 5 or 6 years in the future after the primary events of Pokemon X and Y. Which is why we were expecting wholeheartedly to see a lot of familiar faces here. In a sequel to any movie or series or game that you've ever seen, it's likely that one of the most exciting aspects is to see those familiar faces again. During that initial journey through whatever story you're experiencing, you're sitting there wondering what happened within these last couple of years. Where did these very important characters go? What is their situation currently? And that's generally really natural, right? When you connect with a character, you're obviously going to want to see what's going on with them, even if it has been a couple of years or so. Hell, look at Resident Evil Requiem. People are ecstatic that Leon is coming back. So of course the same situation is going to apply here. People are very nostalgic for 6th gen. So how did that match up with reality? Well, we got a semi-depthful Lumiose City with flat buildings and half the returning cast that we probably expected. Yeah, people were not really all that happy about the fact that we went from zones to wild zones. And the fact that we had to stare at the same environment for the entirety of our playthroughs. Yeah, that's definitely a decision to make. Reasonably enough, I believe, we were kind of expecting for a lot of other aspects to make up for the fact that we were only going to be in one city, what with more buildings that we were going to be able to enter and an underground situation that we would be able to explore. Granted, the story and the side quests will have you ripping and running through Lumiose, exploring it as in-depth as you possibly can, but in reality, it kind of just makes you wish they did a little bit more with this, you know? Not to mention that the city in of itself is lacking a lot of visual depth. Like, yeah, sure, the models and characters look generally good, as well as the Pokemon, but if everything surrounding it doesn't look as good, there's a little bit of an imbalance in the contrast. Does that make any sense? And next to all of that, the cast that we have in the game, while absolutely adorable, I love this cast, a lot of people are definitely not happy about the fact that there's a lot of cast members that are completely missing with not that much of an explanation. It's awesome that we have returning characters like AZ, like Mabel, like Emma, like Lysander, and most recently with the addition of the DLC, Karina. But now people are wondering like, okay, well what happened with like Callum and Serena? What's going on with Tierno and that gang? And most importantly, what the hell happened to Bonnie and Clement as they were running the gym in Lumiose City? What's going on with that? So in this specific situation, it's not necessarily that the cast that they introduced to us is bad or anything like that. It's just that they were expecting more returning characters, more references to the aftermath of 6th Gen. So at the end of the day, it's all cool and dandy that we get to explore this bigger, more realized version of Lumiose City, one of the biggest cities in the entirety of the franchise, but it's a little disappointing that it didn't get as fleshed out as we probably would have liked it to be. My second expectation kind of bled into the first one, but we're gonna explain it more in depth anyways. Expectation 2, an underground system that would build upon the vastness of the city. Like I said earlier, people were very concerned about exploring only Lumiose City. So, a lot of us, myself included, figured that to remedy that, they would give us a more vast underground system. We figured that 100% for certain they were going to find a way to incorporate something that would be referencing the Paris catacombs, as Kalos is based off of France. We figured it might look something like a Tears of the Kingdom situation, where we have our above ground where we're doing everything up there, but eventually we would be led into the underground through story, and we end up spending a lot of time down there and having a lot of story take place underground. It would make a lot of sense considering the fact that even if Lumiose City was any bigger, it would still be incredibly limited. So how does that hold up in reality? Well, we got a relatively uninteresting underground overall. The biggest issue here is that the quote-unquote underground is a sewer system that is a bunch of hallways with nothing of substance in them that you only visit like maybe twice mandatorily during the story. There could be some neat Pokemon down there and side quests will take you down there every now and again, but for the most part, the underground is just simply not that important and it's not treated as so. In a way, technically, it is kind of treated as its own wild zone of sorts, considering the fact that there's not really anything else down there but random Pokemon. And one of the 2 times that you're mandatorily down there during the story, you have one major fight against Gwyn, and that's it. Not even a rogue mega evolution or anything of the sort to really progress the story. It's just kind of a little side quest filler situation during the primary story that takes place. And if I'm remembering correctly, there's only really 2 real variations of the underground, and one of them is significantly smaller than the other version. So again, there's nothing visually interesting in either of these hallways that you go down there to explore, and it adds almost nothing to what it could have to Lumiose City. And that is completely buns. Moving along, we have Expectation 3, a brand new combat system that would shake up the gameplay a bit. Another of people's major concerns was the fact that this game was not turn-based. Like I said in one of my previous videos, people are not too fond of major change, especially when it comes to Pokemon that they've grown up with and they've had turn-based combat for their entire lives. And during the promotional era, there was a big misunderstanding about where real-time combat was going to be placed when it came to the mainline series, and they didn't get that it wasn't going to replace turn-based combat. That just simply was not the case. Regardless of that fact though, a lot of people were still relatively intrigued by the idea, and they wanted to see a system that would really shake things up, speed the gameplay up a little bit, make things a little bit more investive when it came to Pokemon battling, see what type of new metas and strategies this type of battle would create, and just generally see if it would help with the pacing of Pokemon games. Suffice to say, in reality, we got exactly that, bar for bar. I'm sure that a lot of people can agree that while this game has a ton of major flaws, one of the best things to come out of it was this combat system. I made a video about a year ago saying that it seems pretty unlikely that real-time combat would work long-term in mainline Pokemon, and I'm so glad that Legends EA has more than proven me wrong. It's very strange that we live in an era where people are very turned off by the idea of turn-based combat for some reason. I don't know why, especially when a lot of us grew up on Pokemon and have no problem with it there. But naturally, and this is no diss on turn-based combat, but real-time combat is just more engaging and will keep your attention for a lot longer. And suffice to say, throwing out move commands for your Pokemon in real time works really well. And so they went out of their way to create a gameplay loop that had you constantly utilizing this system, and it works. Which is why a lot of people after playing Legends EA, despite how they feel about it, could probably agree that going forward, if they were to tap into it a little bit and make some improvements and adjustments here and there, this system could work really well for future Legends titles. And doing that would make this the perfect sister series to the generational titles, something to look forward to that's always different. I can't speak for everybody, but I am super glad that they played around with the formula just enough to make it work for this game, and I really hope that it doesn't die here. Next, we have Expectation 4, a customization system based on France that would top most other customization mechanics in the series thus far. Funny enough, one of the things that people were the most excited about and actually jumped on board for was the customization that they were showing off during the advertisement era. We would see all of these different trainers that looked completely different from one another, and that was the most exciting thing that we could ever see after Scarlet and Violet, where we were severely limited almost more than ever since the system has been introduced. But it only made sense, right? Because customization started with 6th gen, it started in Kalos. So naturally, we had to go full circle and see the best customization we had ever seen in the franchise thus far. So many unique and fun hairstyles that you could dye the way that you wanted it to look. Being able to mix and match all these different shirts and coats and pants and socks. It looked almost too good to be true. So yeah, a lot of people had a lot of high expectations when it came to the customization aspect. In reality, while we did get what is technically probably the best customization we've seen in a Pokemon game, it still definitely suffers from previous game antics. Even though this in particular is more of a nitpick, it's still really unfortunate that we don't actually get to visit and go inside of a store. We're still greeted by menus. And even though there's a lot of stores, each of those stores only has like 3 or 4 things each in different colors. It's like, okay, cool and dandy and all, why don't we have certain select stores that we could actually go inside of instead of having like a semi-mall area with a bunch of different clothing items scattered about in like 400 different stores with menus only? Why did we do that? Why did we not have like 3 or 4 stores that were constantly updating so that we could visit any of those and get different clothing items from each? I don't understand why we did it this way. And that's barely even tapping into the primary mechanic itself. And a lot of people's problem with that is that the men's clothing is still significantly, brutally limited. When I've played through a mainline Pokemon game, I usually play through it twice, once as a male and once as a female, especially when there's customization involved. And every single time that I do that, I can tell immediately off rip how severely limited I was playing as a guy first. Now here's the thing, right? It is severely underappreciated that all of the clothing is not gender locked. That joke I made at the very beginning of this video actually isn't a joke. You can wear Jacint's dress and you could look beautiful as a guy in it. That is awesome and amazing and tops the customization of pretty much every Pokemon game prior with just that alone. No debating that. However, that is still technically women's clothing. So if you want to dress in men's clothing, you are severely limited. So you do have to play mix and match a lot if you really want to get the most out of the customization system, but at the same time, I still feel like they can add on more to the men's clothing as well to really help diversify that. But again, you can look beautiful however you want to, in any clothing you want to, and that's incredible in of itself. I would like to believe that that is not a problem for most people, but you would be surprised. So let's move on. Expectation number 5, a story tapping into the Kalos War and AZ's involvement, seeing how those consequences would catch up with him while we helped run his hotel in a modern developing city. I can't speak for everybody, but I was fully under the impression that we would spend a lot of our time building up this hotel. I was fully under the impression that it would be us at Team MZ building up this hotel while also having to deal with the antics of Quizartico Inc., who was unjustly building up their empire in this city, utilizing the Wild Zones for a major plan. I had also figured that something like the Rust Syndicate would play a neutral party until Quizartico Inc. stepped out of line a little bit, and then everything started to get a little too dangerous, and Rust Syndicate would help Team MZ take down Quizartico. Because I was genuinely thinking that they were utilizing Zygarde's power to help power the city, and in turn, it weakened it, and this would lead to some crazy Mega Rogue fight against an Abomination version of Zygarde, and then that's how we would get its power back or something. I also figured that throughout that time, we would spend time getting to know AZ a little bit more on a personal level, getting to know his likes, his dislikes, how he spends his free time, what he wants to do with the hotel. We would get a lot more guests actively participating and relaxing at the hotel, people in Pokemon alike that maybe didn't have a home. The way they introduced Naveen and Lita, I kind of figured it might have gone in that direction because these were two characters that found a little bit of a safe place here, away from home, away from it all. I don't know, I just thought we would see a lot more like little cute cutscenes of people and Pokemon working together to help build up the hotel a little bit more, clean it up so the vines aren't overtaking it and things like that, and make it a real establishment that people are regularly visiting and we are the workers there. And throughout that, I figured we would get drip-fed a little bit more of AZ's personal story, how he came to be a king, what his situation was, him losing Floette and his involvement in the war and stopping it, and what he did for all those years after the fact. This man, to our knowledge, has seen the world of Pokemon grow more than anybody else, so I felt like there was a lot of themes we could have easily tackled with that. So, what is the reality of that? We got a story delving into the slight politics of a city that couldn't handle its own developments because of all of the Pokemon that were being drawn there, as well as the resolution to a situation created by AZ and Lysander's carelessness with the ancient weapon. So in a way, we still kind of got what we expected, just not the way we were anticipating. I mean, hell, going into this game, most of us were for sure under the impression that Quizartico Inc. was the antagonistic force this time around. That could not be farther from the truth. We simply did not have a real, like, cartoonishly evil antagonist throughout this game. However, we did see in real time AZ's problem come back to bite him in the ass. Same with Lysander, who I again wasn't expecting to see in this story at all, but you know what? The way they handled him, it was more than welcome. So even though this story definitely tossed my expectations completely out the window, I'm not really necessarily mad about that. This was a really good story. But it's funny because I felt like with the limitations that we got from this game, it really helped us spend a lot more time with a lot of these characters. Granted, not as much time with AZ as I would have liked, but I'm glad we got to spend more time with him at all. And overall, it gave us a conclusion to a story that we didn't even know needed one until we got it, and that's great. You know, I'm really happy about that. Like I'll always say until they actually do so, Pokemon definitely could still use some work in the writing department and actually letting loose with true themes and development when it comes to these characters. But for the most part, within recent years, even with some of the worst Pokemon games we've seen, they have been locking in with the writing, and they've been getting better and better as time goes along. And I can't really be mad about that. And lastly, we have Expectation 6. A lot of new Mega Evolutions and returning Pokemon. Once we saw that Mega Evolution symbol at the end of the initial teaser almost 2 years ago now, we were like, oh yeah, new Mega Evolutions are an absolute shoo-in, especially because this is a Legends game, meaning that the 3 starters that we were guaranteed to get would be from completely different regions. And because it was a safe bet to assume that this game was going to work like Legends Arceus, these starters would also get new forms. And alongside that, we figured they kind of had to get creative with the Pokédex and what Pokemon were going to be available, considering the fact that we took place exclusively in Lumiose City. So we kind of had to figure out how we were going to get all of these Pokemon available to us. And the reality is that they did precisely that. At the end of the day, nobody is ever going to be satisfied with the Pokédex number ever again because of what they pulled during the Sword and Shield era. In this case, it made plenty of sense as to why there was actually a much more limited number of Pokemon available to us. But even then, I feel like they did a pretty good job not only picking out Pokemon that we never see too often in prior mainline games, but they also did a good job picking out who actually got Mega Evolutions. And I'm saying this now, I'm including the DLC in this because we got a lot more Pokemon than I expected out of the DLC, but I ain't mad about that, not at all. Damn near 20 new Mega Evolutions out of that pool as well? They're crazy for that. It made for a really interesting turnabout overall, and made me want to really diversify my team throughout each playthrough. Could they have thrown in a couple of more Pokemon here and there? Yeah, you know, that couldn't hurt, but hey, you know what? They gave Staraptor a Mega Evolution. I'm set, yo. I'm good, man. So I guess at the end of the day, I expected a Pokemon game. One that would not be flawless, one that would be missing a lot of different things that could have easily improved the game in a bunch of different ways. One whose graphics definitely aren't up to standard with AAA title games right now, especially for what they're pricing it, and so on and so forth. But one that would be fun. A game that would definitely have a lot of different new things implemented into it that would give me hope that they would actually learn and implement these new, fresh ideas that worked very well into the next major titles. And what I got was pretty much that. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one, and I think this is something that we're going to do more often from now on, starting with probably the Gen 10, or maybe even, we'll see if we really want to do some content on it. I might even do it with Pokopia or something like that, if we want to make any content on that. We'll play that one by ear, but for now, yeah, we're going to be doing more expectation versus reality videos on future titles, because I feel like this is something we should have been doing. But regardless of that, I'm passing the mic over in your direction. I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Did Pokemon Legends EA meet any of your expectations? Did it live up to what you were thinking it was going to? Did it give you anything that you wanted, or possibly even everything that you wanted? Or was it on the opposite end of things? It didn't match up with any of your expectations because you had your expectations higher than, you know, you wanted it to be for this game, and they fell completely short of everything, and that's valid too. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do exactly so. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor for taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye! Like this, like switch, life is priceless. Like this, like switch, life is priceless. Hit the light switch if you need a light switch. Like this, right quick for the night.